Hello and welcome everyone to today's Association for Manufacturing Excellence webinar titled Use the AME Excellence Award Process to Improve the Way You Improve. I'm Jerry Strohmeyer, the Education and Training Program Coordinator for AME, and I will be your moderator. Today's presenter is Michael Bremer, President of the Cumberland Group. Michael has 35 years of experience in the field of process improvement, organizational transformation, lean manufacturing, and leadership team effectiveness. He has authored and co-authored 4 books on process improvement, including his most recent book, a Shingo Research Award recipient, How to Do a Gemba Walk. He also teaches at the University of Chicago's Graham School. Michael is on the AME management team, a member of the Boston AME International Conference Committee, and is the Vice President of the AME Awards and Certification Programs. Before we start, just a couple housekeeping items. You will be in listen-only mode throughout the webinar. You will see that you are muted on your attendee panel on the right side of your screen. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them into your question area in the attendee panel and click on Submit. We'll review the questions at the end of today's presentation and answer as many as we can. When you log off today, please check your email inbox, and it will be an invitation link to fill out a short webinar attendee survey. Please take a few minutes to complete the survey today, as your feedback is very important to us to improve future webinars. Michael has also graciously agreed to provide a PDF of today's presentation. We'll be sending that along with a recorded link for a webinar replay to each of you next week. Now I'm pleased to introduce Michael Bremer, who will present Use the AME Excellence Award Process to Improve the Way You Improve. Take it away, Michael.
Thank you, Jerry, and sorry for the hiccup in our broadcast. As Jerry mentioned, I've got a little bit of experience, and what that means is I'm old. But that's given me an opportunity to travel around the block a few times and hopefully learn quite a bit. And I'd like to share some of my experience with everyone today. I'm really not the same person that I was 10 years ago or even 3 years ago as I continue to practice using lean methods and now agile within the software world. So what I find is the new things I learn cause me to change the way that it is that I lead. And really, the Excellence Award process at AME is also intended to do that for people that participate in it. It's really intended to help us improve the way we improve, both for our organizations and the way we act as leader. If you do a Google search in the word leadership, there's over 780 million items that you'd find. And if you did a search on leadership books, you'd find almost 13 million items. So there's a ton of information that's available on leadership. Yet the World Economic Forum report issued in 2016 said the number 3 problem in the world is a lack of leadership. And that problem also, problems number 1 and number 2 have a strong correlation to this in that they dealt with income inequality and creating jobs for people. And leadership is really involved in both of those, making both of those things happen. So I'm surprised that this wasn't the number 1 problem. But it's fair to say that there's a leadership crisis in the world today. We have it on the political front in many countries, including our own, with the extremism. It doesn't matter if you're on the right side or the left side, but as we push to those far extremes, not really focused on what it is we need to be doing, working together, it causes problems. And that same thing is happening with extremists and many other parts of the world, from the violence that's taking place in some parts of the Middle East to things that are going on in Europe and in Russia. So it's fair to say that we've got a leadership problem on a global basis. We typically have a leadership problem in our companies. And I'm hoping that everybody that's listening to this call has the goal of personally becoming a better leader. And I think the AME Award process can help that to happen. If you look at lean transformations, really any improvement transformation that has taken place over the 35 years that I've been doing this sort of work, there's been a common percentage in studies that have said that 7% of the performance improvement effort failed to achieve the targeted impact. Now, some people will translate that and say 70% of improvement efforts fail. That's really not true. Most of the time, organizations do get better when they adopt an improvement methodology. But what happens is the magnitude of improvements they thought they were going to get, they don't realize that. And there's one primary reason for that, and that's the way Company A goes about improving is very similar to the way Company B, that's in the same industry and that competes against Company A, goes about the business of improvement. So both of those organizations get better, but they don't do a substantially better job than the other organization is getting better. So even though they both got better, nothing much changes on the competitive scene. And We wrote about that a lot in a book that we wrote in 2010, Get the Improvement Trap. So there's key issues there, and it's frustrating because there's so few organizations that are on the far right-hand side of this graph that are highly effective at improving. And one of our goals with doing the work that we're doing, I think AME in general, not just our award process, but AME, is to help more organizations move from this area in the middle where 60% are next to the mean and get more organizations to move over to the right-hand side. We're in the process of working on a new model at AME, so what I'm sharing with you is really a work in progress, but it fits with what we're going to be talking about relative to effective improvement practices. And what we're trying to lay out is a pathway that people can pursue, pathway that people can follow to do a better job of becoming excellent. And it really starts with reflection by the leadership team on understanding what our current state is, reflection by the leadership team on finding ways to change their perspective so they can see their world differently, because you really need to look, you can't continue to do the same thing over again and expect different results. You've got to find ways to make that change happen. As the leaders start to do this, they really then want to build relationships inside their organization. Doesn't matter if it's a hospital, a manufacturing company, or a university. I want to get others to reflect and to validate our current state. I want to get other people thinking more critically about what is it that we need to be able to improve. And as that's happening, that also causes the leadership to further reflect on what is our current reality, what is the understanding of our people and what's important, what are our people telling me that's important that I as a leader I'm missing. Then the third thing, and a lot of times people like to make this third thing first, but it really should follow the other two, is I want to define a unifying purpose. Now that I know where we're at, now that I know what some of the issues are, where is it that we really want to be going? What is it that we really want to be accomplishing over the long term to go? And I'm going to do a better job of defining that purpose if I've done a good job of understanding what my current state is before I start doing that, because I know where I'm coming from. And we think that those three things are a little bit unique in the new model that it is that we're developing. The next three steps are pretty common to any improvement model. Once I know my current state, what are the gaps based on where it is we say we want to go, what do we need to do to get better, then let's do it, let's take action. And the last step is I want to measure progress. The twist that we put on this is you want to measure your progress in a very visual way. You want to be publicly posting that stuff, that information that is important to driving appropriate behaviors moving forward in the future, and to hopefully we're working toward a purpose that has more meaning, something that people can be inspired and become passionate to accomplish. These elements really fit with what I'm going to be talking about relative to the AME Award process. The AME Award process, discovering this pathway to excellence, really, we broke it into 3 milestones. And the first milestone begins with simply a self-assessment. So you don't have to participate in our award process. You do not have to apply for the award. Just take the information that we're making available and make use of that inside your organization. And you could start with simply taking a look at what's the criteria that we're using to define excellence. It's available on the website. At the end of these slides, there's a link that you can use to go to this information. But we've broken this into a couple of key parts. What is it that we're using to deploy overall? What is it we're trying to accomplish? So looking at the management system that the organization is using. Many people are using a Hoshin or a policy deployment type thing. What's happening on the human front to develop the people that are inside the organization. If you go beyond that, you could be looking at safety, what's happening in the overall environment to reduce our footprint, and then the overall extended value stream, our value streams inside the organization, where we're looking at what is we're developing to meet future customer needs. What is it that we're doing to work with our supply chain, which is becoming more and more important for organizations. The next big block deals with probably the traditional tools. What is it that we're going to reduce waste? But we've added to that, what are we doing to level the workloads? What are we doing to reduce fluctuation? What are we doing to reduce variation? And we really want to be looking at that, as well as what are we doing, where do we have overburden resources, both on the manufacturing side and in the way we're running the business. So looking at 2 elements, what manufacturing our operations. And then finally, we should be looking at if we're doing an effective job at improving, are we really getting the results that we would expect to be getting? Are we positively impacting what it is we're trying to accomplish at the business? So one thing you could do is simply take a look at the criteria and say, do we have a holistic approach that is taking these things into account? Because very often, improvement activities get trapped within that manufacturing operations block. And if the organization is going to transform, it really needs to be broadened out of that. There's no way you can transform just from a focus on improving your operations. The next level would be to go, and last year we rolled out the AME Lean Sensei, and we've received an amazing amount of feedback on that. And that really takes our award criteria and goes the next level down. So we have 60 questions. They're all based on the criteria from the previous slide, but it's the next level of detail down. And it's a more granular picture of what does excellence look like. What does we're doing okay, but we're really not excellent yet, or what does it look like if we're really early in the game and just getting started in the journey? And so taking a look at this and using this to assess where your organization can be very powerful. And there's a way within the instruction set for this that we suggest people use the information. What we suggest is you take those 60 questions, and if you look at this graphic, you put those questions on a wall somewhere within your facility, and they're shown here in the left-hand side of this picture, and you score it. And ideally, the way you'd score it is you'd have somewhere between 10 and maybe 20 at the most people come together. You try to come to a consensus for each of the 60 questions on where people feel you're at. And then what you want to do is you want to go into the organization and gather visual proof and analytical proof that, or quantitative proof that supports the score that it is you've given. So if you think you're excellent, there really should be pretty broad usage of that throughout the organization. It shouldn't just be in one or two spots of the organization, but you should be doing it in a number of places. And you should be able to gather pictures. You should be able to gather analytical data that substantiates that, yeah, we really are doing this at an excellent level, and here's the proof. This is simply a thing you can use for your team in a self-assessment mode to validate that, yeah, we think we're really good. Here's the data. Here's the scientific data to support where it is that we think you're at. And it's amazing the number of people over the last year that have taken this and begun to use it in the feedback that they're giving us and how that is indeed helping them to improve the way they improve. Once you've done that inside your organization, you're in a position of where now I know what my gaps are, I know where it is that we're at, what are the things that it is that we want to target for improving, begin to lay that out. Why is this important? And start to explain that and start to focus your resources on what it is we need to be doing to take it to the next level. This is simply an example of an organization, the actions they're taking, where they're posting, in this instance, on a weekly basis, what are the things that it is that we're doing relative to our key improvement opportunities. Very often when you talk about change, people talk about people being afraid of change, but what we found is they're not really afraid of it. What people are afraid of is uncertainty. And so as I go through those first three steps of the model that it was we were talking about earlier, of reflection by leadership team, getting people inside the organization to reflect, and then establishing a new purpose, typically a reason why. Why is this important? What is it we're trying to accomplish? People can start to buy into that concept, and it becomes a very powerful driver of making transformation happen. And we believe the more visual you make that, the easier it's going to be to progress and move forward. The other thing that you can do with the Lean Sensei is once you've come up with your scores, you can compare your scores to those scores of past award recipients. And so that gives you yet another way that you can look to see, well, what's our current reality versus some people out there that are really good at doing this. You can see what their scores are like. It's another thing that you could use to begin determining where your most important gaps are, what's the most important things you need to do from a performance improvement perspective. That takes us to the next milestone. So the second milestone in our overall award process is people that actually decide that they want to apply for the Excellence Award. Now, the one thing I want to make certain that's very, very clear is this process is not about the trophy. Now, we've got a really cool trophy that it is that we're giving. You might be proud to have a trophy that looks like this. It's all made out of metal. It's obviously a manufactured item, but that is not why anybody should be doing this process. The primary reason for doing the process really should be to get feedback. It's very hard work to improve. Most organizations are doing the best that they can on the inside with the resources that are available to make improvement happen, while in the meantime we're still getting real work done, and that's always a challenge. But what we have available I think it's just phenomenal. One of the things I get so excited personally about being involved in this award process is we bring great people together. We've got organizations that wish to apply for the award, and they're always fascinating to go, whether they become an award recipient or not. These organizations are always fascinating to see. And we've got an outstanding group of assessors. We have over 70 people that have volunteered. They give free time to be an assessor for our award process. And 2/3 of those people still have jobs within the world, mostly in manufacturing, but they still are working in businesses. They're not consultants, they're not educators. They've got real jobs in the real world, yet they're willing to give time to help organizations do a better job of getting better. And I just think this is such a great resource that we all should be taking more advantage of. Every time I work with one of these assessment teams, I learn from the co-assessors. I just did a site visit a couple of weeks ago with a group with 3 other assessors, and it was the site was really cool. I learned from seeing the site, and it was fascinating working with these highly intelligent and practical people that were on the assessment team. So I think taking advantage of that, getting this feedback report is very, very powerful. And as you look at feedback from some of our past recipients, we had a Fortune 100 company, and one of the things they said is, we're a mature organization. We think we know a lot about improvement. We're really not good at listening to feedback from the outside. But when they looked at the feedback report, they said they felt 50% of it was actionable right away. They felt that it was going to drive some substantial improvement, and that the assessment team itself, that the assessors did not spend time on trivial stuff. They really focused on what was important to that organization. They felt that there was also many items noted by the assessors that they knew about, but when the assessors stated it from a slightly different perspective in a slightly different way, that viewpoint gave them another way to look at it, and it caused them to adjust some of the improvement opportunities that they were going after, caused them to make some significant changes to their improvement plan. Another award recipient, and we've heard this from quite a few recipients, is the award feedback report was better than the trophy, which is what we're really talking about. It provides a how-to guide to continue improving, to take wherever it is that you're at. Even if you were an award recipient, how can you take it to the next level? And that the suggestions in the report were also humbling. And one of the things that I've noticed in organizations that are highly effective at improving is the humility of the leadership team. And so to take a report like this, take this feedback, and realize that there's still more that it is we need to be doing, can be very empowering. It can be very, very powerful. Just briefly going through, what does the application process look like? It really starts out in January. By the end of February, we'd like to get this, but giving us an intent to apply. So letting us know that you intend to apply in 2018. There's some basic information that's there, and we also want to get some information that simply describes what's going on in your facility, how large it is, the number of employees. These documents will be available. We don't have the 2018 up yet, but we will in the next couple months. It'll be available. And that simply gives us a heads up on how many applicants are we going to have. I start thinking about assessment teams, both in terms of experience and people that are geographically convenient to the applicants. And we start putting our initial assessment teams together based on this preliminary information. It's very helpful to us to get it because we know what's coming. Talking about leveling your workloads, this is some of the information that allows us to level the work that needs to happen, which is especially important since most of our assessors have day jobs and they can't just drop what it is they're doing, at the spur of the moment. We need to give them a heads up on what's coming and start to plan that. The second step is a major change that we're making for 2018. Previously, what we've asked people to do is to send us up to 50 pages an achievement report. So it's a written story, a written narrative of what it is the organization is doing. And the applicants were expected to follow the award criteria in writing that story. Some organizations were better at writing it than others, but I think there was a challenge in just sitting down and writing 50 pages worth of information. We've tried to make this process much more simple for future applicants. And what we're now planning on doing is actually using the Lean Sensei. So it's a version of that. And you go through and you've answered the 60 questions. You scored yourself from your self-assessment. So you would share what your self-assessment score is. And then In the Excel document, or if you find it awkward to work with Excel, we're going to make a Word document available as an alternative template. But you simply would put in the space, in the columns in the Excel where you could put proofs, what this is a line out of a previous achievement report during this meeting, the metrics and the improvement are reviewed. So you talk about what it is that you're doing if you're rating yourself excellent that supports if you're being excellent. You might also have some quantitative information that you're putting within these spaces to let us know, here's how we scored ourselves and here's why we think we're this good. So the evidence would be there. Our hypothesis at the moment is that this is going to make it very easy for people to be able to apply, because if you do the Lean Sensei the way we suggested, you would have laid this all out on a wall somewhere within your facility, and all that you're doing now with the Excel document is transferring the information from the wall to this Excel file. And we're expecting this to make the process way easier for everybody. The people who've talked about it so far have been pretty excited about doing it this way. Then you need to download, there's a metric supplement that goes to this in the achievement report at the back end of it. And if you remember the criteria, we asked for what are your results? Well, we want to know what your overall results are. So we're looking at the usual, the safety, quality, what are we doing for delivery, what are we doing for productivity, what are we doing for cost and quality. There's a set of key metrics that it is that we're asking for. And in 2018, there's a couple of optional metrics that we're going to try as an experiment. They're metrics that are not required, but in the self-assessment report, we'll be asking for a couple of other things that we think could further complement and help us to further understand the effectiveness of the improvement activities within an applicant's organization. It'll be interesting to see how that works. You take this information after you've downloaded it and you send the completed Excel file and the metric supplement to the AME office by mid-March, and that will begin our award cycle next year for 2018. So we'll review that information that we've received. And if your evidence supports the self-assessment scores that you've given us, we then will be arranging site visits, coming out to see the site. If we have some questions about it, we will call the applicant and say, well, you guys are scoring yourselves here, but the evidence that you're showing us looks like this, or is there something here that it is that we're missing? Is there something that we don't understand? So this year, for the first time, we asked for clarifications and ended up, after those conversations and getting some additional information, we added a couple more applicants to the site visits for 2017. The third milestone, the final milestone of the award process at AME, and one of the reasons that people go to AME is they're all looking for pearls of excellence. And we're looking for pearls of excellence within the award process as well, because those become things that AME and AME members can use for our learning. The whole idea of share, learn, and grow, which is core to our purpose, totally the award process is intended to match that. And last year, for the first time, we started talking about what were the pearls, what were the things that the assessors felt that the award recipients did exceptionally well. And we went back to them with 2 or 3 items, and each recipient picked one of those items. And in the conference in 2017, they shared what it was that they were doing that was an outstanding level. We'll be doing that again at the conference in Boston this fall. Pretty excited about that. And the more we can get our award process in alignment with AME's core objectives of share, learn, and grow, and we can have more people applying, find more pearls of excellence that we can all go see and we can all learn from, it'll be a very, very positive experience for all of us. So we talked about 3 milestones: the self-assessment, actually applying for the award, and then if you become a recipient, sharing what your pearls are, which I find pretty fascinating. So just briefly going back through the pathway to excellence as we're now talking about it, it begins with reflection and engaging, building relationships inside the organization to get others to reflect and validate. And that all really happens within our award process of using the Lean Sensei, taking a look at the AME Excellence Award criteria and using that to make these 2 things happen. If you've done that, you can then say, okay, here's where we're at. We know what our current state is. What's our future target? Where is it that we want to be going? And then once we've identified the gaps, we begin to progress toward that with actions. And a couple simple examples in here, but visually showing how it is that we're progressing toward accomplishing this new purpose. We feel this can be powerful. We're probably going to be expanding. We might change it slightly, but we're going to be expanding the information that's available under this model during 2018. Relative to the mindset, one of the things we all need to realize is, when is this race finished? And the answer is never. Some people will talk about excellence as though there's some known destination, and some models seem to imply that there's an end of the journey, but there really isn't. Back to that one of the early graphs we talked about, of showing the distribution of improvement effectiveness for organizations overall. If you were really outstanding and improving 10 years ago, and that you're still doing it the same way today, you're no longer outstanding and improving. So the ball is now in your court. Contact us if you have any questions. We encourage you to download and use the AME Lean Sensei. And our primary goal, as I said, is to find your pearls of excellence. So with that, if we're still online, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Yes, we are online, but I do notice that it does say you're offline, and I don't see the last page, so maybe it's not picking that up.
Yeah, I don't know. I got that note again that said that the thing ended. But if we're still online here, let's just do it, because when we shared the slides with people, they'll get the links. All I had was the links.
Right. Exactly. And everyone online will receive that. And again, thank you, Michael, for the presentation. And now we'll review any questions. So if you do have any questions, please type them into the right side of your screen. And here's one. We are very busy. How do we find time to do this, to apply for the award?
Well, part of what it is, we tried to eliminate, it was a lot of effort to write the 50-page improvement report. Right? That's the reason that we made a major change to the process. So if in fact if you're using the Lean Sensei the way that it is that we've suggested, or even if you've got a self-assessment that it is that you're doing on your own, going through and pouring that information into the Excel document, it becomes much more like a bullet point outline. So what are the things that it is that we're doing? So it looks like I've been restored here. What are the things that it is that are going on in our organization? And simply in the Excel sheet, or if it's easier to use this as a Word document, doing that, just give us that information, and we'll use that for doing the assessment. We're not asking people to write the narrative anymore. I think the other power, though, that people have said is they start to pull everything together and to communicate their story to us. The feedback that I've received over the years is that there's learning that takes place from that. Just the mere fact that you're trying to capture your story is that's going to change your perspective on what it is that you're doing. Because when you have difficulty explaining it to us, maybe you're not doing it quite as well as you thought. And so going through and using that is going to help the journey. I understand the difficulty. Our hypothesis at the moment is using the Lean Sensei is going to make this easier, because the biggest obstacle to doing the process in the past has been the time it takes to write the achievement report. So we're totally empathetic to that, and this is what we're trying to do to make it easier for people to participate.
Okay, great. Another question is, how about just having the Director of Continuous Improvement to fill out the assessment and then sending it into AME?
Well, you could do that, but you could have the Director of Continuous Improvement just write the achievement report. But what you have then, I mean, I've had jobs where I was the Director of Improvement, and with all due respect to the people that have the job responsibility, you're biased. And so if you really want to be giving us something that's representative of what's going on in your overall organization, you really should have a cross-functional group doing the assessment. Certainly the person that's in charge of improvement could and perhaps should be responsible for pulling the information together. But I think if you go through and you're gathering this from people inside your organization, so they're helping to pull the information together, if you merit a site visit after that, you're going to be in a much better position. The story that you gave us, the people in the organization believe, and the site visit's going to be better. Whereas if we're just getting something that's simply the improvement person's view of how the world is working, those site visits tend not to go as well because we're not as in alignment as we should be.
Okay. And looks like we got one more question. What if we do all this work and do not merit a site visit after you review our information?
Well, we made another change. That's been a problem in the past. So a change that we made this year, 2017, is
Michael? It looks like we've lost Michael. But I do want to follow up and thank everyone for all your questions. And there will be a more in-depth workshop on the AME Excellence Award at the AME International Conference on Monday, October 9th in Boston. Our next scheduled webinar will be on Thursday, September 7th, titled Lean Certification Overview with Larry Anderson. This is also a free webinar. And you may visit AME.org under the AME Events and Training tab for more information on both events and to register. And please don't forget to fill out the short survey that will be in your inbox. And thank you everyone for your patience, and have a great day.